Alhamdulillah, by the mercy and grace of Allah.
Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursalin. Sayyidina wa Mawlana Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa alihi wa sahbihi ajmeen. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitani rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Inna Allaha la yughayyiru ma biqawmin hatta yughayyiru ma bi anfusihim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ahasibun nasu yutraku yaqulu amanna wa hum la yuftanun. These two ayahs of the Quran from Surah Ra'd and the other one from Surah Al-Kabut, chapter 13 and 29. The translation of more or less which reads, Verily, Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change their inner selves, what is in their minds. And the second ayah, do the people think that on their mere saying, we have attained to Iman, we have attained to faith, they will be left to themselves and will not be put to a test. And I read these ayahs as a consequence of us having just completed the month of Ramadan, in which a very powerful truth, the Quran, was manifested. Thus, really, we are celebrating the anniversary of this most momentous event in the history of mankind. We have emerged from the month of high-intensity training, and in this month we have improved our bodies, our emotions, our mentality, our morality, and our spirituality, as we have acquired taqwa. There should be a qualitative change in our thinking and in our behavior. We should become far more conscious of the dire conditions of the Ummah and of all of humanity. So people will ask, what type of people are these that pray 5 times a day, they don't drink, they don't gamble, they go without food and drink from dawn to sunset. They don't oppress people, however, they don't allow themselves to be oppressed. So one may then ask that every year, annually, we have this training and our discipline. So why is it that we Muslims are so weak, that we Muslims are so divided, that we are illiterate, majority of us, and poverty-stricken? What is it that makes Muslims, after emerging from this month, that we attack, that we starve, that we suffocate, that we bomb, and we kill other Muslims, not only on land, but even in masajids? Look what's happening in Sudan today, and what has been happening in Yemen, in Syria, in Libya, in Mali, Somalia, Kashmir, Rohingya, and so on. So as we witness the suffering of millions of people, we need to reflect on our weaknesses as an Ummah. An Ummah that has fallen into the trap of emphasizing our differences instead of what is common amongst us, of creating deep divisions that has led us to embrace and to seek the protection of the very people that are killing innocent women and children. While we Muslims are blameworthy for our situation, there have been a number of think tanks that have emerged to set up deliberately to divide the Ummah. One of the interesting ones, one of them, is known as Civil Democratic Islam. It is a study that was published and edited by Sharad Banar of the RAND Corporation. It is a National Security Division, a think tank that is based in the United States of America. What they did is they analyzed Muslims. They studied Muslims sometimes even better than we know ourselves. And they looked at the Muslims' attitude towards certain things. What is the Muslims' attitude towards democracy, for example? How do we feel about the criminal justice, the chopping off the heads and so on? What do we think about Islamic justice, and of the minorities, and of the hijab, and of the woman's dress? Are husbands allowed to beat up their wives? So they looked at these and few other issues and they categorized the Muslims. They put us into pigeonholes. This is an orthodox, he's a fundamentalist, he's a modernist, he's a progressive Muslim, and so on. But it wasn't only categorization. They started saying, okay, the modernists are closest to the West. So how do we engage them and put them into positions of power? How do we create a conflict between the progressive and the modernist? Fundamentalists are no good because they believe in an armed revolution as given by universal law, international law, and Islamic law. So they are dangerous. But the orthodox we can use, and how do we create a conflict between the orthodox and the fundamentalists, including ulama. So they raised ulama, and basically is the classic divide and rule. But they have gone further. They don't only divide Muslims and rule them, they create and exploit others by defining who is a Muslim. They define us and divide us as a fundamentalist, extremist, terrorist, orthodox. These are conservatives, Wahhabi, Sunni, Shia, Salafi, you name it. They have divided us into Urban and Bareli, and then we fight with each other. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has named us in the Quran, in Surah Hajj. He says, Uwa Samikumul Muslimin. He has named us Muslim. But we follow the West, we fall into the trap. You know, there was a division about 100 years ago. It was known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement. It was done between the colonizers, France and Britain. And they divided the Khalifa, the Osmania Empire, into small, dependent fiefdoms. And they were given certain areas as a reward for the puppet regimes. The Arab rulers were given titles. He's a king, he's a sheikh, and he's a sultan. And the reason for this was to weaken the Ummah and thereby control the Ummah. So they took some of these people, trained them in the UK, made them soldiers, brought them back, and made them rule over the Muslim Ummah. And we have remained in the same trap for decades. The Muslim world in general is mired in poverty. We lack the most basic necessities of life. Now, we are about 2 billion Muslims, 1.8 to 2 billion Muslims. 800 million of the Muslims are illiterate. That is about 4 out of 10. If you take the Christian world in general, their statistics show that the adult literacy of the Christian world is 78%. Ours is hardly 40%. We have 57 Muslim majority countries. They call them the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Conference. Of these 57, there are about 10 universities per country. So that means about 600, less than 600 universities for 2 billion people throughout the world. Now if you take India, a population of 1.3 billion, do you know how many universities there are? 5,758. So we have 600 for 2 billion people. They have for 1.3 billion, 5,758. In the United States of America, population of about 350 million, they have about 5,700. They have 8,000, sorry. India has 8,400 universities, America has 5,000 universities, and the Muslim world only 600 universities. And yet, despite our weakness economically, militarily, in terms of education, despite our weakness, they, the West, they consider the Muslim world as the enemy, as the real threat to their way of life. It was a NATO conference in Brussels in 1993, 30 years ago, in the absence of a communist state. Communism had fallen. They invented a new enemy. They called it the Green Menace. It was Islam and Islamic fundamentalists. There was a general, a 4-star general. His name was Willie Claes. He saw a memo that described how NATO, now NATO is a country of about 30 countries altogether, and how NATO is going to target 7 Muslim countries and demolish them one by one. And they did that. In 5 years, they wanted to do that. And they started with Iraq, they went to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, now Sudan, you can see, and it was going to finish off with the Islamic Republic of Iran. So this is the scenario, but something has happened in the last month. There has been a dramatic and a tectonic regional shift in the Western imposed world order with the rapprochement of Saudi Arabia and the Islamic Republic of Iran. The Saudi-Iranian agreement that was sponsored by China will have a major impact on the proxy wars in Yemen, in Lebanon, in Iraq, and in Syria. The two Middle Eastern biggest powers can be expected to have far-reaching repercussions in the region and the wider world. For example, just some of the advantages that will be there. It will bring about a Sunni-Shia reconciliation, somewhat unifying the Islamic world and countering the United States and Israeli schemes to deepen and create a bigger sectarian strife. It will block Israel, what has to be doing, normalization, get people to recognize it. And we have seen with some of the Arab states like Morocco, like Sudan, of course Jordan and Egypt are there, and United Arab Emirates, they have normalization to them. It will also terminate US domination in the region, and this has been going on from the Second World War. It will block American and Israeli plans into the Gulf states. You see, the reason why the Gulf states are so weak and dependent on Israel because they have manufactured this fabricated threat of Iran. In fact, things may turn around with this rapprochement and look at the threat that Israel poses to the Muslim world. It will create an economic boom in the entire region. So instead of fighting and spending arms on armament, which is really enriching the Western world, it will create enough money to put into trade and instead of conflict. And perhaps most importantly, Palestine. It will become the central cause. We have seen what has changed in Palestine. That instead of only throwing rockets, not only, it has created a terrifying scenario for Israel, but it has not only created from a threat from Gaza or Lebanon or Syria or Jordan, or even the Sinai and Egypt had missiles, but it is now posing a threat from within what they call Israel, from within the West Bank. Now just wonder for a moment, if this were to happen, that the Muslim world, how powerful it will become if we are to get together. We are about 2 billion Muslims. We make up 25% of the world's population, almost. 70% of the oil wealth lies in Muslims' lands. If we look at the gas, 49% of the world's natural gas, according to Oil and Gas Journal based in the United States of America, is owned by Muslims. 21% of the uranium which remains bombs and so on is in Muslim countries. The Muslim world also located in some of the most strategic areas of the world, the Red Sea, the Black Sea, the Mediterranean Sea, the Arabian Sea, and of course the Northern Indian Ocean is where Muslims are. And of course, if you look at Africa, it's 70% of the world's population. We have enormous mineral, agriculture, and natural resources in this country. So we are actually extremely wealthy if we are able to use it productively. But we know, as Muslims, that it is not economic wealth and it is not the military arms, but Iman, faith, that determines the victory. If we just look at the combined Muslim forces today, we are the largest army in the world. We have 7 million active military troops today, if you take it as a whole. We control, as I said, half of the world's oil and other resources. We are placed strategically at the naval straits. You know, the Strait of Hormuz, which is between United Arab Emirates and Iran. 30%, one-third of the world's oil goes through the lake. We have the largest land mass. We have nuclear weapons. We have the largest air force. And of course, we are now leading manufacturers of the drones. You know, now with such power, one wonders, if you go back to the 8th century, there was a Khalif, Mutassim. He ruled Baghdad. And on the border of Baghdad, there was the Roman Empire. And they were molesting, harassing, really, a Muslim woman, tugging at her hijab. And they threw her into jail. And she screamed, "Oh Mutassim, oh Mutassim," screaming for the Khalif. Somebody heard about this. Now, they were not raping her, as they have done in Bosnia and Serbia for all these years. They were not killing her or breaking her bones as they've done in Masjid al-Aqsa. I don't even know to give you, you know on social media what is happening on their side. They were just harassing her. But when this Khalif heard what happened, he said, and he warned the Roman Empire, "I will send a troop, an army that will reach you while it is still leaving my place. It will be so huge." And he did that. The Khalif went there and he opened the cell and he said, "Labbaik, I am here, I heard your pleas." We are so powerful today, yet we allow 7 or 8 million people to abuse the Ummah in this way. This reconciliation, inshallah, can lead and stop, in fact not lead, stop the state of chaos, of violence, of civil wars, and intolerance of others that plagues the Muslim world. We will be able to implement social justice. Just a study on the 6 of the richest Muslim Arab countries. You know what zakat they have every year? $32 billion. That will lift every Muslim out of poverty. There are many ayahs, and time will not permit, that talk about unity, about bringing and ending the sectarian divide. In Surah 3, verse 103, it said, "Hold fast to the rope of Allah, all of you, and be not be divided." Another ayah, chapter 23, verse 52, it says, "Verily this Ummah, this nation is one nation, and I am your Lord." So the message is clear, that the brotherhood is that of the believers, whose the best protector is nobody else but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the best guidance is revealed by Allah, and He is the one, there is no alternative to that. And we have it shown by Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that this is the way that we should be doing it. Of course, the West doesn't like it, America doesn't like it, Israel will not like it, and they will try their best to seek this reconciliation. So, the West has been seriously wounded. It's failing in Ukraine, it has failed, and it's still licking its wound in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Palestine. But this peace treaty that has started developing within Iran, it's been broken by China. One must ask the questions that world Muslims, are we going to exchange one set of slave masters like the United States and America and Britain and France that we had for another set like China and Russia? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala warns us in Surah Al-Imran. It says, "Oh, you believe, take not into your intimacy those outside your ranks. They will not fail to corrupt you. They only desire your ruin. They desire to harm you severely. Red hatred has already appeared from their mouths. What their hearts conceive is far worse." We have to realize that Islam, and if we take it seriously, is a call to revolution. A revolution against the manifestations of Jahiliyyah, like in all shapes and forms. In the 10 years Rasulullah had in Medina, he fought about 78 missions. How come? It's not easy as we have seen. But if we say, La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah, Muslims, through action and sacrifice, will gain victory, inshallah. Allah concludes with this ayah of the Quran. It says, those who are disbelievers are the friends and protectors of one another. If you do not act in this way, there will be turmoil in the land and great corruption.
One of the IIS daily projects through Zakat, Lillah and Sadaqah for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as was taught to us by our beloved Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Institute for Islamic Services is Section 18A certified. Jazakallah for your much needed support of all the IIS daily projects. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.